As you know, this chart is representative of 2008-2009 school year and the CST. And as you can see, African descendant students were about 21%, white students were about 21%. And basically, most of the data I'm going to take directly from the CST that students just took. Typically, when we talk about, can't even see it, okay. Typically, when we talk about CST, we talk about API. 5 years ago, we were about at 159. Today, presently, we're at 142. And so we've made strides, 17 points in the last 5 years. And as you can see, the purple line is African descendant students, and the top line are white students. And you can see, even though we've made progress, the gap still remains. And as you can see, as it extends out, there's no likelihood from what I'm looking at that that gap can be closed. As a matter of fact, if you take the 17 points we show there, it averages probably about 3.2, as Superintendent Raymond said, and it would take probably 42 years at the present rate to move African descendant students all the way up to where white students are. And as he said, I'm sure none of us are foolish enough to believe that we want to take that much time in doing for African descendant students what we should do, what we need to do, or what is our responsibility to do. What we did was we took all of the identifiers relative to the CST test in terms of where kids are: advanced, proficient, basic, below basic, and far below basic. But we decided to do something a little different. We took a look at what this data looked like in comparison, and our pages were so jingle-jungled that you couldn't make very much sense out of it. So we decided to do something very different. We decided to, okay, let's take proficiency and add it to advanced. Make that one item, make basic stand by itself. And then below basic, we decided to run the below basic and the far below basic together, just to see those comparisons on a page so it's not so jumbled. Here's how it's going to work. Let's, for example, second grade math. White students scored in red, 73, and the proficiency level 73, while black students scored 43, all students scored about 58. And you can see the difference between white students and African descendant students of about 40%, which simply means white students there were 40% more white students in the proficiency column than African American. Now, if you look at it, grades 2 through 6, you'll see white students in the very top in red, and you can see those numbers of 70%. And if you look at the green, especially in the first column, you'll see where African descendant students are. And you'll see that there's that difference. And the difference continues from second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. Now, when sixth grade, when it gets to sixth grade, something interesting happens. The below basics for African descendant students starts to climb. Now, when you look at algebra, you find out that, again, white students are just under 70%, seventh grade algebra. African descendant students are all the way down to about 33%, 35%. And as you move forward until about ninth grade, you all of a sudden see that the failure rate in Algebra 1 by ninth graders starts to rise. And when 10th graders take Algebra 1, their failure rate is even higher. When they take it as 11th graders, that failure rate is still higher. What it seems, the longer a kid stays in school, or the older he gets and he takes Algebra 1, the worse he does. Interestingly enough, in geometry, first year the students have an opportunity to take geometry is in 8th grade. In 8th grade, there are about 700 African descendant students, and only 8 of those students qualify to take Geometry 8. Almost 1.2% of that whole class of 8th graders qualify, as compared to about 32% of white students. And again, as you can see in 9th grade, The failure rate for African descendant students in 10th grade, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade continues to climb to the point where it ends at 90% failure. Algebra 2, not much different. It follows the same pattern. Only 9 students qualified as 9th graders to take Algebra 2. 9 students. That's, again, it's about 1%, whereas white students sent about over 30% of their students in Algebra 2 the same year. And again, as it moves forward, you see the failure rate for African descendant students approaches 80%. I'm going to skip this. Skip the language. When you look at language arts, again, you see white students do pretty well, close to 70% from grades 2nd all the way to grade 5. And African descendant students are about 30% lower in terms of the areas of proficiency. And that continues. You get to 5th grade, and you'll see there starts to be a rise again, and those students who are scoring below and far below basic. When we look at it from 6th to 8th grade, you'll see white students are doing pretty well, and African descendant students, again, are at lower levels. But it tends to level off for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And let's take a look at it in high school. You see white students, again, are doing pretty well. But the failure rates, notice, 10th, 11th grade, starts to climb in language arts. So again, it seems the longer a student stay in school, the worse they do. What this chart shows are proficiency, the differences in that proficiency rate. For example, 2nd grade, the difference between white students and black students in 2nd grade is about 23 points, 23 percentage points. 3rd grade, it goes up to about 31. 5th grade, it goes up to about 33. And you can see how that curve demonstrates. The gap is always is there and consistent. If you want to look at the basic, by the time students get to 11th grade, African descendant students are even with white students in terms of the number of students they have at that basic area. And you can see what happens the longer African American students stay in school at the below level. It starts climbing higher and higher and higher to the point they have 30% more students far below and below basic. This is a California high school exit exam, and it demonstrates leveling off, not only a leveling off, but a downward trend in terms of where students are. And as you can see, we're African descendant students at the very bottom. It's much more sharper on its downward trajectory. As you can see by this chart, the number of students who started school as 2nd graders at 700, it's almost over 700, close to 750 students start off in 2nd grade. By the time we get to 11th grade, African descendant student numbers are down to about 500, and the 12th grade numbers, I'm sure, are even smaller. So I think basically what I'm saying is you can see what those trends are and how they leave us where we are right now with students possibly dropping out of school, possibly involved in some other kinds of things that are not productive for the community. One of the things we talked about in our report, and somebody will provide that report for you real soon, we've made some suggestions in terms of how we thought that we might be able to make some differences in the lives of our kids quickly. We're at a point now that when we talk about making changes, we're talking about something extraordinary. If we continue to do the same kinds of things the way we've done them, we're not going to make the kinds of changes necessary to get kids where we want them to be. I look forward to see in the future ideas, activities, programs that are different than anything we've ever seen. Because if we don't do that, we're going to be here again next year, the year after that, saying the same old thing. And I'm not sure that's not where we want to be.